We'll let the cards do the talking.
You did your best.
I'm gonna think you're gonna play some spells. I'm gonna tap some lands.
And that's really all that anybody can ask of you, is that you try your best.
Look. All right, Glacial Fortress and Mountain. Starting off. John's deck we're calling Is It Control? It has only 6 creatures. We have Niv Mizzet Perun as a 2-of.
Can't be countered.
Can't be countered. For the excellent mana cost of blue, 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 red, red, red.
Very castable.
And then we have Crackling Drake as a 4-of. That's
Whetstone is on track. Look at that. A dual land, an island, and a mountain. Halfway there.
And land 4, he could Crackling Drake here. Just passes.
And if you look at the spread of removal in Rosum's deck, he's playing 3 Cast Down, 3 Moment of Craving, 3 Ritual of Soot. A lot of this stuff is real poor against Nicol Bolt, or Niv Mizzet rather. Does have those 3 Vraska's Contempt. He's going to be leaning on those heavily if Niv Mizzet shows up to play.
Chemister's Insight. It's our first one we've seen cast here is on the end step for Whetstone. First spell of the game. Both players' mana set up very nicely. Looks like Whetstone's going to go ahead and cast an Opt here. Maybe he doesn't have that land yet, as he scries to the bottom off Opt. Let's see if he hits it. And a full grip. Picked up Secrets of the Golden City. And been interesting with these, you mentioned with cards like Glimmer of Genius gone, to see what kind of cards would be placed in the draw spot. You see John discarding that Secrets to hand size when he had the mana to cast it.
Love that play. Great patience there. He's either has Sinister Sabotage or some counterspell, or at least is telling John Rosum, hey, don't cast a fairy next turn. I got you covered.
Whetstone tries again for an Opt main phase. Really wants that land. Did he hit it this time? No, he did not. These draw spells doing no good if he has to discard the extra cards.
It's like 24 lands in the deck. It's the volume where generally you'll find your 5th land, but you're going to miss sometimes.
Discarding a second copy of Secrets of the Golden City. 6th land for Rosum. No draw spells played on his side, but he's able to make those land drops. And this is going to be a tough one for Whetstone if he can't find extra mana to work with.
Rosum playing 27 lands.
My concern would be if we start getting to the point where Rosum has enough mana to go Teferi plus Sinister Sabotage, he can actually just start bullying with those extra lands.
Right.
And here is Crackling Drake from John Whetstone. I assume that will be countered. It's actually going to resolve, but it's going to be hit by Cast Down. So John Whetstone gets another chance at a land off that card draw trigger.
And there's a little bit of an interesting element happening when it comes to the deck red sheet, it being week 1. Whetstone is playing the kind of deck that might feature more creatures that are vulnerable to Cast Down. Enigma Drake is the one that stands out. Rosum doesn't know if those are available or not. As it stands, just 4 Crackling Drake and 2 Niv Mizzet, so those Cast Downs don't have a lot of targets.
And a third discard to hand size for John Whetstone, and Rosum will capitalize. With an tapped out opponent, he takes the opportunity to Teferi plus untap 2 lands.
And this is really tough for any deck to recover from.
Well, you'd assume Rosum's got a counterspell to protect it or a backup Teferi if it dies.
And there's just not much in the way of spells that cleanly answer Teferi anyway. For a red-blue deck, it's going to be really tough. You can't Lava Coil it. The best possible is Shock Lightning Strike.
Of course, now the land shows up for Whetstone.
Yeah, right on time there.
Yeah. In this matchup between Crackling Drake and Niv Mizzet, I actually like Whetstone's chances here quite a bit. This game may be a bit maybe out of reach. We'll see.
Yeah, he has some really powerful elements. He has some cards that are really mopey in the matchup, but he'll upgrade those post-sideboard.
Eighth land here for Rosum. With Teferi going, no need to do much else.
And mentioned earlier that Rosum does have a number of cards that don't line up as well, but he can lean very heavily on Teferi. It's just that powerful of a card.
Whetstone will Chemister's Insight on end step. Make sure to let that Teferi trigger resolve first. And he'll cast an Opt. Draws off that. There we go. There we go. I got something on the card there. Opt Scries to top. Land 6 for Whetstone. So Niv Mizzet mana online.
One thing about Niv Mizzet, it can't be countered, but it can be targeted. Like, this is 4 islands, actually. It can't be cast. But even if it could be cast, it can get tucked away by Teferi. It's not a huge concern.
And that shows off some of the difficulty. Even in a straight 2-color deck, it can be hard to cast. Chromium the Mutable will be an end-step play here by John Rosum. So yes, he does have win cons that are not named Teferi. He actually plays 2 copies of Chromium, and 7/7 will be flashed into play. That too can't be countered.
Yeah, that one's just about impossible to beat, especially from a position where Rosum's at 20. You have to already line up multiple spells to take care of a 7/7 with a red deck. And then Rosum has plenty of cards active Teferi to just discard and protect the Chromium from some combination of burn.
Lightning Strike from Whetstone on Teferi. Teferi will drop to 4 loyalty.
The plan here for Whetstone is to try to get a Crackling Drake that can block the Chromium.
Okay.
It is, he's pretty far behind.
Yeah, well, the hard thing is that Rosum's going to have removal spells for that sort of play.
Right. Vraska's Contempts, Cast Downs. Depending how large the Drake is, Moment of Craving can break that up, even if he gets the block. 2 Moment of Cravings will serve as a combination that will just take care of the Drake.
We see that there's the Crackling Drake. Cast Down again spent by Rosum. He'll let Whetstone have that extra card. Whetstone does have his main deck copy of Negate in hand. Deciding right now whether he wants to fight over this.
I mean, part of what's happening here is that Chromium's a 7/7. You kind of have to do something.
So he'll negate back. The issue is that with all these extra cards of Rosum's, he kind of...
Something's going to handle the Drake.
Right. You just have to make him have things. I guess Sinister Sabotage will take care of the negate. And John will surveil into the graveyard.
And now he's in a position where the Chromium connects, the Teferi is going to go up to 5, and Whetstone's going to need to try to assemble 2 things because the Teferi can just tuck away any potential Crackling Drake blocker, and the Chromium will come across for lethal in the following turn.
Yep, here's 7. It sends Whetstone to 6. And pass back. And you're right, there's multiple, at least 1, I believe 2 copies of Vraska's Contempt in Rosum's hand. That coupled with the Teferi is going to make it very hard for Whetstone to stick a blocker. And you can't really play a removal spell on Chromium.
Right.
So.
Yeah, Teferi active over the course of this many turns is just so hard to come back from.
Well, it all really goes back to those earlier turns with Whetstone missing all those land drops. He had to go for the Crackling Drake to try to get enough lands in play, but of course that exposed him to Teferi. Here is Niv Mizzet. Niv Mizzet Perun, a great card, and I think one that in Game 2 could really turn things for Whetstone. It is not going to be enough here.
Right. It's just smaller than Chromium as it is, so the only thing you can do right now is chump block, and Rosum just has it covered.
Rosum with Vraska's Contempts in hand, doesn't even fire one off on end step.
Yeah, really no need.
A show of confidence indeed. Teferi's going to tuck away the Niv Mizzet, and Whetstone will pick up the cards. These blue mirrors lands will matter, and Rosum shows exactly why that is. He's up 1-0.
Yeah, both players trying to cast an uncounterable threat, though. Chromium is just pound for pound a lot more powerful than Niv Mizzet.
So we look over to the sideboards for both players. Remember, one of the things I think is going to be fun about Week 1 Standard is that you're always sideboarding in the dark to a certain level. On Rosum's side, he has 3 Duress. He has 2 Disdainful Stroke, 2 Fungal Infection, 2 Invoke the Divine, a Vona, Butcher of Magan, a Moment of Craving, a Negate, a Profane Procession, an Eldest Reborn. I don't think those last 2 are in there. I'm going to ignore those guys. First of all, because the other cards already add up to 15.
Right.
And also, I don't think he can cast either of them.
Yeah, not being able to cast them is an issue, but he knows at least that Whetstone is playing a very spell-heavy deck.
Right.
He has seen the 2 threats. You can guess whether or not there's any Enigma Drakes or Rail, is it Viceroys available. No matter what shows up, though, that copy of the Eldritch Reborn is going to be pretty good against Whetstone's deck. You'll probably get a turn to leverage that. Profane Procession lines up pretty well against these Crackling Drake kind of strategies. Over time, it generates an advantage, which is pretty powerful in this kind of matchup. And then reaching for some amount of duress, Disdainful Stroke, you can probably gather that Whetstone is on 4 copies of Crackling Drake, so the stroke is going to be pretty powerful. Duress is reasonable. It's not at its best in this matchup. There's a lot of cards that draw extra cards in Whetstone's deck, but it's fine. You can see if the coast is clear regarding counter spells, try to resolve your Teferi, Hero of Dominaria.
Whetstone and the main deck is still a 30 spell, 6 creature deck, so Duress is probably coming in over some removal spell. How do you feel about Disdainful Stroke, because you've seen these Crackling Drakes?
Yeah, I think it's a great cover for that, and you can probably guess that Rail Zarek is hiding around there somewhere, or at least some kind of Haymaker in addition to the Drake is hanging out. And Whetstone also casts multiple copies of Chemister's Insight, which is a fine copy to Disdainful Stroke. It's not the most exciting use, but you know you have targets.
Yeah, post-board in Control Mirrors, I don't mind countering a draw spell, so I could see that working. On Whetstone's side, he has 3 Disdainful Strokes of his own. He actually has 3 copies of Legion War Boss, so he can go toward more threats post-board. He has Fight with Fire, Lava Coil, 2 extra negates, an extra Fiery Cannonade. These are all more copies of his main deck cards. Niv Mizzet, Shivan Fire, all copies in his main.
Yeah, so he wants to just go heavier on the elements that are good in a given matchup. The 2 negates are quite powerful against the Esper control deck. He really, in general, just needs to fade Chromium.
Yeah. Do you think he goes for the Legion War Bosses, kind of like doing a Monastery Mentor impersonation here?
On the play, I think absolutely. This is the kind of matchup we're going to expect Rosum to move off of stuff. Certainly Moment of Craving is not going to be in the deck post-sideboard unless Rosum just has the Soul Read. So the War Boss should figure to be pretty good on the play in game 2 here. The negates, the Disdainful Stroke, these are all answers to Teferi. They figure to be pretty good.
So players are going to get ready for their second game here. Meantime, if you didn't read about the announcement we had this week on StarCityGames.com, there's a bunch of exciting changes coming to the SCG Tour. Biggest one I think everyone's excited about is the return of the Players' Championship. It's going to be 16 players, $50,000 next year to be December 2019, qualifying all through the season. And one of the things that yet another reason to try to get out to the invitationals. We know our invitationals do qualify players for the Players' Championship. So let's talk about some IQs. We have them firing all of next year. They, as always, still are $1,000 to the top 8 anytime you find an IQ with 2 invitations to that upcoming invitational. You get SCG points, which are going to matter here, top 8 pins and playmats, and some new registration tokens. You can get the Aaron Barrett's human token, some new ones that I'm going to be giving out next season I'm pretty excited about here. We have our Nick Miller, finally, off the sideboard as a 1/1 Thopter, and then Todd Stevens, the 1/1 Lifelink Cat, the Regal Caracal. Could not think of a more regal Magic player than Todd Stevens. You see here. That's nice.
Yeah, really great couple of tokens here. I really like the goggles on Nick Miller there. That's a great element.
Yeah, these will be giving out next season. Then you can find an IQ near you, starcitygames.com/IQ. The specifics, I know some people asking the specifics of IQs for next season. We'll have more details on those to come.
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
I got a bingo square. Got to make sure I check this one when I see it. Both of these players are on the current top 32 of our leaderboard. Whetstone and Rosum.
That is true. I have a match with a player who's won an Open this year. That would be John Rosum.
You going to check that one again? Oh.
I think we already had it, but now I do have a 4 in a row. All I need is someone casting Conclave Tribunal using 3 creatures.
Yeah,
you better be worried.
I think that's extremely reasonable.
I guess Chris Van Meter is playing that card.
I believe that He's not the only Celestia player in the field, and I believe that that is a relatively common line of play for the deck.
Yeah, that is the new copy of Oblivion Ring, or Banishing Light, 4 mana. I think it'll be cast. Will it be cast convoking 3 creatures?
Three is a lot. I think that 2 happens a lot because of sapling migration specifically. You end up in situations where it's extremely mana efficient. But 3 is a relatively big ask there.
Well, all the game 1's finished, and they're all pointing in the same direction. Dylan Donegan and Kazu Negri both winning as we go here to game number 2.
And you saw Whetstone taking the play here. He does have more creatures. He is kind of the beatdown, and this is the specific card, Legion Warboss.
Yeah, Syncopate from John Rosum, so he passes the check here. Legion Warboss, is it fair to me to compare it to Monastery Mentor in this kind of matchup? It's scary.
I mean, it's a lot weaker, but it's the same role anyway. You're going to be very light on answers to it, and it can run away with games on its own.
How about Goblin Rabble Master? That's maybe a fair comparison?
Yes, the 2 cards are strictly different, but very, very similar.
Oh yeah, they're the same except for
What I mean is I can tell you that Monastery Mentor is better than both of those cards. I cannot tell you which one is better between Warboss and Rabble Master.
All right. And again, Whetstone misses the land drop first, and he's going to miss it twice as he passes back to Rosum.
And no white mana for Rosum just yet.
Okay, so at least when Whetstone taps out, he's not going to immediately be Teferied, but wait, here is Isolated Chapel.
And we're getting to the point where even if Whetstone doesn't tap out, he can still get chromiumed.
Yeah. Well, Rosum's out of lands. Nope, he drew one.
He plays 27, so he's pretty
so he gets
well
he
set
gets
up.
to have 2 more every game, right?
Yeah,
I think that's how that works.
3 more in the deck red sheet,
3
2
more
more in a game. Yeah, it's 27 versus 24, right?
Okay, so that's why he's up 3 here.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Those are the 3 extra lands.
That's just math.
Here's Duress. If you register 3 more lands, you will have 3 more lands in play.
Yes.
Every game.
I'm pretty sure.
I'm not registering. If that's true, I'm not registering enough lands in my control decks. We see Fight with Fire, Crackling Drake, Sinister Sabotage, Negate, Legion Warboss, and Niv Mizzet.
That Fight with Fire kind of alludes to an issue that Whetstone's deck has. It's pretty likely, certainly possible, that Rosum just could be boarding in Lyra Dawnbringers.
Right.
And that's why you have to reach with Fight with Fire, which is pretty well just dead in the matchup otherwise.
And I like what Rosum did here. He's going to take Negate because every other card costs too much mana. He wants to keep John off of double spelling, and that's why you take the Negate.
Right. Those 2 Sinister Sabotage, you can't cast both in one turn, and if you leave him with 1, he still has a counter spell. Not really a big gain there, whereas only 1 land off of Sinister Sabotage plus Negate on the same turn.
But Whetstone draws the land. 7 mana was up there, so we see no Chromium from Rosum. However, with the land drop, John Rosum has perfect information, and now he goes for Teferi with 3 up. There's just got to be a Sinister Sabotage.
Yeah.
There is. Rosum resolves it. He gets to have Teferi. He gets to draw a card, and he knows there's no answer on the untap for Whetstone.
Right. Whetstone just left over with a bunch of junk. Fight with Fire doesn't do anything against Teferi. Niv Mizzet, it would be fine, but Rosum can just go to his turn and -3 even if Whetstone finds the land for it.
Yeah, and again, that's just really him punishing with the mana advantage. I mean, Whetstone, in a perfect world, had 2 Sinister Sabotages. He could have won the counter war if he had the resources.
Right. And this is the spot you end up in with Izzet decks quite a lot. In the blue mirror, you want to be the better blue deck. You want to be the deck that can just kind of sit on your hand, cast some counter spells, make land drops, and his deck's just worse at that than Rosum's.
Yeah. Ops gets land 6, passes. Legion Warboss was made there.
Showing that Teferi was boss.
Yeah.
It's unclear what Rosum has in the way of clean answers to the Warboss plus the token post sideboard. He did have main deck copies of Ritual of Soot. It's generally not great in the matchup, though leaving the token behind is not a huge cost if you have a clean answer to just the Warboss.
And that's what he does. He Vrasa's Contempts away the Warboss, and he'll leave the token. So that'll just trade loyalty with Teferi.
And that is an exchange that Rosum is absolutely fine with.
Untaps 2, and we go back to Whetstone. We know Whetstone's hand has Niv Mizzet, Sinister Sabotage, Crackling Drake. Looks like he picked up a Syncopate. That's really not going to play well here.
Yeah, Syncopate's one of those cards that it has good windows and bad windows, but when you get to this stage in the game, it's generally bad. When you're behind on lands, it's pretty much always going to be blank.
Whetstone decides to go for Crackling Drake, keeps the Niv Mizzet in hand, and so Rosum will cast Disdainful Stroke. That can certainly work on the 4-mana spell. And we're going to see some more card advantage on the end step then. Rosum goes for a Chemister's Insight of his own. We haven't actually seen Chemister's Insight jump started yet.
No, we saw Whetstone cast 2 in the first game. Must know about my bingo square.
What does it say? Does he have to jump start it?
I need to jump start it.
I think Rosum will help you out here.
He doesn't
have to. He doesn't have to.
Right.
Yeah. He'd rather just play the land. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, if he's not forced to cast spells, he just keeps drawing with the fairy, and then going plus a card on the insight is not something he wants to do.
Tax the fairy back down to 4. You're right. You don't actually want to thin out your deck too much. Yeah, I was just going to cast another one.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I don't think I want to jumpstart another one. That's too many cards.
And he's still comfortable just making land drops.
Wow, there we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
There it is.
So aggressive.
So live. Now, if I could get Whetstone to play one of his rails and destroy his own creature with it, that'd be another square for me.
Triple colored mana creature. I think you get that.
Oh, yeah.
Niv Mizzet.
Niv Mizzet was cast.
I think you can check it off twice, actually.
Right,
because it's Niv Mizzet.
Yeah, it's blue, 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 and red, red, red.
We'll see Duress from John Rosum. Now we need is a 3/3 Pelt Collector.
That card's good. I don't know if it's going to be played. It's a good card.
I like the card.
That's a card that could show up in the Modern seat as well.
That Teferi continues to do what Teferi does, which is just draw a million cards and
win games
through pure attrition.
Teferi, winner of Magic the Gathering matches. That was the.
He is the hero. He's the hero.
That was the playtest name. Yeah, they wanted something a little flashier for the release of the set.
Niv Mizzet, Fight with Fire, Syncopate, Sinister Sabotage, Chemister's Insight. John Rosum can take any of these.
Right. He's
well, not Niv Mizzet.
Yeah, he'll find a way to beat that one though.
Yeah, he just contempted or something.
It's
fine.
He gets the information about the Syncopate, and he knew about the Sinister Sabotage, which is the reason I believe that he's going for the Duress in the first place. So not surprising to see him take the card there.
Yeah, in this kind of matchup, Sinister Sabotage is just a pretty valuable card.
Right. And Rosum just has much more powerful resources available, continuing to make more land drops that pushes him further away from ever getting hit by that Syncopate. And as long as he's in his position where Whetstone has to start the action, Rosum will be able to answer it, both keeping the board where he's ahead and stopping Whetstone from ever leveraging that Syncopate.
I really like that John Rosum disdainful stroked the Chemister's Insight there. He's reaching the point in the game where he's got 7 cards and Teferi's going to start making him discard. So he's going to start taking any opportunity he can to trade a card away.
Right.
Even though you wouldn't always see that play, I like that he made it. Secrets of the Golden City, another draw spell from Whetstone.
I believe Rosum hands getting a little bit Teferi flooded, but that's really just an insurance policy.
Yeah.
There's nothing that can go so wrong that the backup Teferi is realistically bad as long as he has a couple castables in hand.
And look at this, we're going to -1 to tuck away the Goblin token. That's not a show of strength.
Yeah, I am not happy to see that on Whetstone's side.
He just says go.
Hey, do you got a shock?
Yeah.
Now you have a Fight with Fire.
I actually was interested. I thought we might see Whetstone jumpstart one of those Chemister's Insights because he has that Syncopate in hand. He did not. I think we may see it at some point here.
Yeah, he has Syncopate for 7 available here, which is not enough to cover a Teferi. I imagine he will want to pitch it at some point, especially because Rosum grabbed the other counters. The way you could potentially leverage Syncopate in a game like this involves 3 spells being cast on the same turn. And if Whetstone doesn't have a Sabotage, that's realistically not happening.
And we'll see an insight. He'll jumpstart it, discarding that Fight with Fire, looks like.
Yeah, that's a tough one to resolve as well. Yeah, the hand was really just kind of crummy for multiple reasons.
And Rosum, is he going to fight back? He's going to Sinister Sabotage back. I think he was at 8 cards, so this might be why we're seeing this kind of play.
Right. Also, when you have a control mirror where the elements of the decks are very similar, Sinister Sabotage is really important, and you want to use them extremely conservatively. In this matchup, Rosum has definitely determined by now that his cards are just stronger than Whetstone's. He can be a little bit looser with the counter spells.
In a mirror, if I had Teferi going, I would want to make sure I could Sinister Sabotage my opponent's Teferis so that I could, because that would be their removal spell.
Right.
But right now, there's not actually a card out of Izzet I can think of offhand that just immediately answers a Teferi.
Yep.
So in John's Rosum spot, yeah, that makes a bunch of sense. Just fire them at first available. It should be fine.
Ooh, I like this, Rosum. Seeing how many cards he has left over.
Yeah, I mean, in blue-white mirrors and Azorius mirrors in our last format, that was a very big concern. I just don't see this game coming to that.
No.
And another update, teammate Dylan Donegan, a 2-0 winner on the Legacy table. Rosum looks like he wants to Legend Rule his own Planeswalker away to gain some extra loyalty toward that emblem.
Just cast spells.
Yeah. One thing, if we're looking at deck size to matter, do we have anything? I guess we can. I was going to ask if we had Commit to Memory in John Rossum's deck. That's not legal anymore, so we can't have that.
No.
Is there any way to shuffle back in?
The only thing you can do is to ferry cards back into your deck.
Okay, you can.
If he finds Chromium, he should be able to close the game in time.
Yeah.
There's really nothing that can stop that from being the case.
Yeah, there's no reshuffle, but you're right. He does have, like, the concern would be that the bottom card is Chromium, I suppose.
Right, that would be an issue.
Another jump start from John Whetstone.
It's just Rob. You beat him.
And Rosum will syncopate.
Yeah, continuing to just cast counter spells when he gets an opportunity to do so.
Gets to untap. Back to Whetstone we go. He's finally got some lands. Still well behind on lands. Rosum has been aggressively denying draw spells from Whetstone. Hoping to.
It's really tough for Whetstone to keep up on cards just against the Teferi, and the only way that Rosum can conceive of losing is if Whetstone just draws a ton of cards, because his cards are just weaker than Rosum's.
Here is Niv Mizzet, Perun.
I can't counter that one.
No, that'll resolve. We go back over to Rosum.
Oh, wow.
Is that Eldest
Rosum,
Reborn?
he's just hanging out with the Eldest Reborn.
It's probably good here.
That'll make it relatively easy for Rosum to close the game if he can turn this all the way from answering the Niv Mizzet into reanimating it.
Yeah, whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery, draw a card. That says nothing about enchantments. And that's what we have with Eldest Reborn.
I believe Rosum also has a Vraska's Contempt if, for whatever reason, this wasn't going to work.
Yeah, he didn't want to do that on end step because, you know, that gives Whetstone a card.
Well, this is the spell he wants to resolve.
Okay.
And if this one works, it's great. And if not, it's the option to also just not give Whetstone an extra card.
Sinister Sabotage, dealing a damage to Teferi, drawing a card. Sabotage back, drawing another card.
And the damage from the Niv Mizzet going at Teferi there, Rossum's life total really not the concern here.
Now we'll see Duress from Rosum. He's patiently held on to that until after all those card draws, and now he's left Whetstone with only lands.
Yep.
I think we can find a way to win from here.
Well, at least Whetstone has an easy discard off the Eldest Reborn.
Yeah.
But he is in a world of trouble now.
So Rosum will untap some lands. I don't know if we have a Chemister's Insight left in Whetstone's yard to jumpstart.
Even if he does have a draw spell, it's not clear what combination of draws he can have from here.
Right. It's still only 2 cards, and to get out of here, you mentioned before, critical mass is what would matter. You just can't make enough of it.
Yeah, his best possible is having additional copies of Niv Mizzet with some spells to go along with them.
Right.
But we know he's starting from nothing on that front.
Yeah, I know in Izzet we do have there is a Sphinx's Revelation style card in Guilds of Ravnica. Whetstone not playing it this weekend. It's a bit pricey.
It's tough to resolve.
Yeah. As far as mass card draw, he really was counting on Chemister's Insights, and then eventually when you get 10 permanents, Secrets of the Golden City.
And this is not the kind of matchup that would draw Whetstone to playing this deck this weekend.
Right.
The reason you want to play this Izzet deck with the Crackling Drakes is you're playing kind of a control role where you're heavy on removal spells against the lower to the ground decks. I would believe that Whetstone played this deck over a deck like Esper or Azorius Control because he's happier with his matchup against the mono-red deck.
You can play Fiery Cannonade and Lava Coil, for example, and they're both in his main deck, and that'll be great.
Right. But when it comes to a deck that's just casting a bunch of 5-mana spells, the Eldritch Reborn into Fairy Hero of Dominaria, he's just way far behind.
Yeah, he does have 2 copies of Ral Izzet Viceroy that I wish we had seen this round, because I'm pretty interested in that card. I can't imagine one would resolve at this point anymore.
Right. Rail just heads up against Teferi is kind of embarrassing. The abilities are so similar.
Yeah, same mana cost, just Ral doesn't... I mean, Ral lets you pick between 2 cards, but then you don't get mana.
Yeah, the not being able to untap 2 lands just matters a ton
Yeah.
in terms of resolving counterspells and counter wars, and also just jamming Chemister's Insights.
Yeah, you look at the abilities side by side. So the first one is a draw for both of them, but Teferi's is a little more... I think mana's better than Selection. The second one, they both are -3 deal with the permanent. I think Ral is clearly worse than Teferi here. This one, these conditional and only hits creatures. And they both have an emblem that probably wins the game.
Right.
Ral's still a great card if you can't cast Teferi. But if you have the option of both, I assume you'll always cast Teferi.
Yeah. And speaking of probably winning the game, Chromium has showed up, so
Yeah.
this will be quick.
Got back a Crackling Drake with that Eldest Reborn. Now Rosum's going to count how many are in his graveyard, and it's some 100,000.
It's a lot. It'll be lethal in pretty short order.
Well, so maybe one turn. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Right.
Hey, that's exactly 20.
Yeah, Chromium plus Drake. The Drake can't attack just yet.
Oh. Yeah.
Bummer, right?
Yeah. Don't know why we even reanimated it.
Rosum did choose this over Niv Mizzet. I assume that this is to play around something like Blink of an Eye, Whetstone casting the Niv Mizzet, and cobbling some bizarre string of draws together from there.
Search for Azcanta from Rosum. First attack is for 7. Next one will be lethal. And for Rosum, both games, an early mana advantage led to an early Teferi. Whetstone was never really able to recover from either of those.
Yep. If you want to play grindy games, Esper is generally better at that than Izzet.
Rosum discarding a Teferi to hand size. Because whatever.
Ooh, has Whetstone ascended?
Yes.
It's like 10 lands. I believe I have this bingo square.
Oh, gain the city's blessing?
Yeah. Where'd it go? Maybe I made it up.
There, no, you got one. You got one.
All right,
Get
all
the
right.
city's
See,
blessing.
there it is. There it is.
Hold on. No, wait. It's being countered. You don't gain the city's blessing unless it gets resolves.
Well, that's true. I'm not going to get a bingo
No,
anyway.
we're unchecking it.
We'll keep an eye on that.
He threatened the bingo square.
You're right.
Rosum's on hashtag Team Matthias. Rosum knows. Rosum's helping me out here. Could have let that resolve, but you know the bingo.
It's so rude.
It's bingo value that's gone there. John's gonna keep like drawing cards. He transformed to search for Azcanta there. Now he's gonna swing, and John Philip Whetstone extends the hand. Kazu Negri dropped game number 2 there on the modern table, but it looks like for him and Stempo, they didn't even play game